Hi folks, Bill with Legends Restaurants here. Today I want to talk to you about show you how we make our meatloaf. And as most of you folks know out there, that we do most all of our ingredients we do from scratch. Our philosophy is if we can make it better than we can buy it, then we're always making it. And today I want to demonstrate to you meatloaf Legends way. Of course, you know, back home, I remember my grandmother making meatloaf, and of course we didn't have she didn't have a lot of the equipment that we have today, and so she's basically bought her ground beef at the grocery store, like most all you folks do, and she'd bring it home and start her creation of meatloaf, and that's what cooking's all about. It's all about creating. So, but here at Legends, we use the 8119 ground beef. We grind our meat up here in the restaurant, and so we have our ground beef. And I'm gonna make a pan, basically this size, and that's like a 9 by 13. A lot of folks at home use a 9 by 13. You can use about half of this size pan. This right here will feed about 18 people, unless you eat like I do, and it might feed 9, about half that many. But normally, what we do is we get about 18 portions out of this pan for our meatloaf, and that's about a half pound portion of meatloaf per order that we'll get out of this. I start off with 5 pounds of ground beef, and then what I'm going to do to this ground beef, I use cracker crumbs. Granny used to use bread sometimes at home. She'd use bread. I take cracker crumbs, and what I do is I grind my cracker crumbs up real fine. As you can see how fine that is. I don't take just whole crackers and just crumble them in. I go ahead and I grind mine up or do them in a food processor, and I get them real fine. However you want to do it, doesn't make that much difference. But anyway, like I said, that's about 5 pounds of ground beef, and I add my cracker crumbs to that. I add a little bit of milk. We buy a meatloaf seasoning from McCormick's that I don't know that you can actually buy that on the grocery store counters, but we bring this in. It's got all of our spices already in it, and it works real well for us as far as our spice blend. So I've got my cracker crumbs, my milk, and my seasoning in there. Then I'm going to come back and add my egg. Be careful not to put any shells in there. Granny hardly ever, I don't ever remember eating her meatloaf and got an eggshell in there. Not saying it didn't ever happen, but be real careful that when you crack your eggs, you don't get eggshells in your mixture. Now I've got everything in there except for my diced onion. So we're going to dice up an onion here. And whenever you dice up an onion, I'm going to show you something that works real well. Best thing is have a sharp knife. That's the first thing you got to have. Depending on how thick of a dice you want in your onion, depends on how thick of a slice. If I want a 1/2 inch, or if I want an 1/8 of an inch, or a quarter, whatever, just take your onion and slice it just like so. If you would zoom in on that. And so you slice that onion and just go down through here slicing your onion the thickness that you want. Now what's going to happen is that when you take this onion now and just lay it here and you start dicing, you're dicing against those rings, and it creates the dice you want. Then I got to come back and take the knife and go this way, because the edges of the rings are not going to get diced up unless I come both ways. So when you do that, then you get your diced onion. It's real simple to do that. So if you don't have a food processor at home, this is the way we dice onions here in the restaurant. And you can get them as thin or as fine as you want. Or you can get them as thick as you want. I just keep going. Notice I got my fingers out of the way, my thumbs are out of the way. I talk about that all the time in doing these commercials, and we preach it here in the restaurants, because when you're dealing with sharp knives, it don't take much to cut yourself. And then just come back and go right down through that ring, and you can see how that's just cutting against that ring automatically cuts these onions up, you know, dices them, except for the edges, and then you got to turn your knife and go the other way to get the dice you're looking for. And if they're a little bit too big, you can always just take your knife and just rock through that. I'm adding about 1.5 cups of onions to my 5-pound mixture. That's what I do. At home, you probably make a 2-pound batch, you know, 2.5 pound meatloaf, depending on what size pan you got or how many people you're actually feeding. Go ahead and set your ovens on about, at home I'd set them on 350. And get your oven preheating. It takes about an hour to cook this meatloaf. And I'll show you how we do that. And I'm going to go ahead and mix this together by hand. And then I'm going to finish it off in our mixer. But I'll mix it by hand and kind of get it pre-mixed. Because when I go to the mixer with it, I'm not going to mix it very long. I'm just going to kind of finish it off, make sure it's blended real well. But at home, you know, if you got a mixer, you can use a mixer. You need to use a paddle, which I'll show you that in just a second. But mix this up. And if I wanted to, I could just sit here and knead this in and get it mixed in. But in the restaurants here, I use the mixer because I've got different people making this meatloaf, and I want everybody to do it the same every time, and I want it mixed the same every time. So we use the equipment that we have to try to make sure we have the consistency that we need. Now, let's go to the mixer. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here at the mixer, we have a 20-quart mixer in the restaurant. At home, you're going to have probably a 5-quart mixer. So probably at home, you'll be doing this by hand for the most part. And that's perfectly fine. Now, this is a paddle. Make sure you use a paddle if you use a mixer. Then I'm going to mix this on low speed just for not long at all. I'm just watching it. So I don't want to sit here and just work that meat over and over and over. Okay, that's good. Then I'm going to take this meat mixture back here and we're going to pan it up. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about. All that's blended real well. And it's ready to go to the pan and to the oven. Okay, let me show you how we pan this up. And there's a little trick we do in the restaurant when it comes to putting our meatloaf in our pan. Of course, now the pan I'm using is has square corners in it. And the reason for that is I want even portions from one portion, you know, all the way across. I get nice even portions. If you got the rounded corners, these pieces in these sides right here or in the corners are going to be smaller pieces. So to have consistent pieces as I cut my meatloaf, I use a square pan. Now, the thing that I do is when I spray my pan, I don't spray my edges. I spray just the bottom. I don't want my meatloaf to stick to the bottom, but I want it to stick to the sides. And what I found out is that if my meatloaf sticks to the sides, then it doesn't shrink in like this, and I have these gaps all the way around. So there again, I get inconsistent pieces. So I'll let my meatloaf stick to my sides, and I'll take a knife and kind of trim the edges of my meatloaf later, or just kind of slice around the edges to let it come loose, and then it pops right out of the pan because I didn't spray my sides, I just sprayed the bottom. That's a little trick we do in the restaurant here. Now, take this meatloaf here. And I put my meatloaf in there. And then what I do is I take my meatloaf and I push it in these corners of my pan real good. And this is the last time I handled this meatloaf as far as the raw product is concerned, because I don't want to overhandle the meatloaf. The less you work that meatloaf, the better off you are, and in my opinion, the better off you are. And we've had more success, that way. So as you can see, that's my meatloaf there. It's ready to go. Now I cook my meatloaf for an hour by timer, and I cover it with aluminum foil. And I cook it with aluminum foil for about 45 minutes. Then the last 15 minutes I take the aluminum foil off, and I let it cook with the aluminum foil off. Then what that does, it kind of crusts the top a little bit, and then we'll add our sauce. So we're going to take this to the oven, put it in, and let this cook, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out. Okay, while our meatloaf's finishing cooking there, let's go ahead and make our sauce. Now sauces, there's so many varieties in different ways to make meatloaf, different things you can put in it. I've eaten a lot of different meatloafs, and I'm sure you have too. Our meatloaf, we call it the Smoky Mountain meatloaf. And where the Smoky Mountain comes from is we have a barbecue sauce base for our topping. I start off with brown sugar. Put about 1/4 of a cup of our barbecue sauce. About 3/4 cup ketchup. Tell me when. When. A little bit of Worcestershire. Put about just about a tablespoon there maybe. Then I take just a little bit of mustard. Granny always made hers with basically Worcestershire, ketchup, and mustard, and sometimes she'd put a little sugar in there. Don't know exactly how much she used. Of course, we have a recipe for everything we do, just so we got consistency in the stores. And if they follow the recipes, then should get a consistent product every time. That's our goal, and that's what we're shooting for. So I mix that up real well. I've got my topping mixed, and I'm ready to put it on my meatloaf. Meatloaf is cooked for an hour total, and there's the meatloaf. And you can see how it's stuck around the edges. Then I'll just take a knife and go around those edges. Now I cut my meatloaf and pull it out, and I top each individual one, and then caramelize the topping on top of it as we serve it. Of course, at home, now's when you'd put your topping back on there. And I would go ahead and cut around my edges and kind of get my meatloaf cut around my edges. And sometimes Granny would go ahead and cut her meatloaf and have it already cut the portion she wanted. Then she'd put her topping on there, stick it back in the oven for about 5 or 10 minutes, and let the topping caramelize on top of your meatloaf. That's what makes your meatloaf, is let that topping caramelize on there a little bit. Folks, come on out to Legends Restaurants, and we serve this every single Wednesday. That's our lunch feature. About an 8-ounce portion of meatloaf, 2 vegetables for $5.99. Can't beat it. Great price, great value there. Also, this is on our dinner menu now. It's called Southern Favorites, and we'll actually take this meatloaf and grill it off, and then top it and serve you meatloaf at night now with some vegetables and side dishes for a very reasonable price. So, if you're watching your pocketbook, which I do all the time, I know a lot of you out there do, you're always looking for good food. I don't say we're the cheapest when it comes to our prices. What I want you to do is leave here knowing that you got your money's worth out of our restaurant. So, hey, come on out to Legends, give our meatloaf a try every single Wednesday for lunch. And if you like it so well at lunch and want it at night, come on back, and we got it on our Southern Favorites menu. Come see us at Legends.